Hi, welcome back to my channel, Alyssa A to Z. I'm excited to start off this series, L is for law school, by talking about my experiences taking the LSAT and applying to law schools. I'm also going to be doing episodes in this series about what law school was like for me, what taking the bar exam was like for me, and the costs of the entire process, because I think that's something that should really be considered when thinking about applying for law school. I also have done a blog post about taking the LSAT and applying to law schools. It's available at my website, www.alyssaatoz.com. And that kind of talks more to my emotional and mental state and how I got to the decision of going to law school. Video is going to be more about the nuts and bolts of that process and just some advice that I have if you're thinking about taking that on. Basically, as a little bit of background, I graduated from college in May 2011, and I was a sociology major and politics minor. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do after college, so I continued working. I had been working almost full time throughout college in retail, and I did that for a little while after I graduated, and then I transitioned into a bank teller job. And I liked being a bank teller, but I wasn't making a ton of money and I was struggling to pay back my student loans that I had gotten from undergrad. So I felt like I needed to get an advanced degree. I talk more about this in the blog post. I know that's what you're thinking. But I decided I was going to go to law school, and I went into that process very unprepared. I don't have any lawyers in my family. I don't know very many lawyers personally, or I didn't before this process. And I was out of my depth, and that's why I kind of wanted to do this series for anybody that is thinking about going to law school and just has like very basic questions. Let me know. Holler at your girl, because I should have asked questions. I should have done more research. And that's an overpowering theme in my journey to law school. Basically, I took the LSAT in my preparations for applying to law school, and I thought that I could prepare for it much the same way that I had for other standardized tests. I've always been a pretty good test taker, and I did really well in the SATs by simply studying from a book that I had gotten, a prep book. I thought I could do the same thing with the LSAT. It's not the same kind of thing, though, and I wouldn't recommend it. It's a very different test. It tests different things, and it's much more used against you, I believe, because law schools want to be able to say that their admitted students have a certain LSAT score because it looks good for them and they can use the information to up their rankings. Law schools also tend to view your LSAT score as an indicator of how you will perform on the bar exam. Though the two tests are somewhat similar, they're very, very different. And having taken both of them, I'm not really sure where the correlation is, but I would recommend doing as well as you possibly can on the LSAT because it will open up a world to you of what schools you can apply to, the financial aid that you might be offered, and what schools will accept you. I did average on the exam. I didn't do horribly, I didn't do great, and I knew I was out of my depth when I got to the exam, and one of the other students said that his father had gotten a 180 and that the joke in their family was whether or not he would be able to match that. A 180 is a perfect score on the LSAT, and I had no, you know, misconception that I would possibly do that well, having simply studied from a prep book. My advice to anyone thinking about going to law school: if you can afford a prep course, do so. I was heavily advised by a professor to do a prep course, but at the position that I was in at that time, I didn't have the money. Most prep courses that I looked into cost upwards of $2,000, and that just wasn't feasible for me. I was covering the cost by myself. I was working at a job that I didn't make very much more over minimum wage. And though I was struggling to pay my bills, I didn't qualify for any of the fee waivers that come along with applying to law school. So I had to figure out the costs of applying by myself. and I wasn't able to do that in addition to paying $2,000 for a prep course. I did what I had to do, I did what I could do, and I got into law school, so it wasn't the end of the world. But as a cautionary tale, I would recommend doing a prep course if you can. Applying to law school was really tedious, and I would say that my overwhelming feeling about the process was that I felt like I was being nickel and dimed, which is to say I felt like there was always a cost, another cost, something else to pay for. And I'll explain it in this way. I talk about it in my blog post as well, more specifically. But basically, there's a lot of different things you have to pay for. You pay to take the LSAT, you pay to send your LSAT score to the law schools that you decide to apply to. And there's something called a Credential Assembly service where you have to pay for your credentials that you have in your application, your resume, I guess, your transcripts, your recommendations, your essays. All of those things have to be assembled, and there's a fee for each one that you want to be sent out to a law school. And then you also pay the law school's application fee for simply reviewing your application, I guess. And that adds up quickly. I think the process of applying to law school alone cost me probably $1,000. And that was a lot when I was working full time and struggling to pay my bills. It's not something I would take lightly, obviously, and it's not something I did take lightly. I was trying to plan for my future and invest in my future, but it was difficult. So I would say if there was anything that I could impress upon you is do as well as you possibly can on the LSAT, because it will make things a lot easier in the application process, and save accordingly for applying to law school, because it's not a cheap process and it doesn't get any cheaper once you're in law school. If you have any questions, feel free to email me at alyssa@alyssaatoz.com or comment on this video. I'm going to be making more videos, and I'm really excited about this series. I hope you are too, and I hope this has been helpful. Thanks for stopping by.